Welcome to our channel. Here is today's headline. Russia and China hit back at a G7 that saw them as a threat. Moscow and Beijing lashed out against the Group of Seven, G7, summit in Hiroshima, where leaders of major democracies pledged new measures targeting Russia and spoke in one voice on their growing concerns over China. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Saturday slammed the G7 for indulging in their own greatness with an agenda that aimed to deter Russia and China. Meanwhile, China's foreign ministry accused G7 leaders of hindering international peace and said the group needed to reflect on its behavior and change course. Beijing had made serious demarches to host country Japan and other parties over their decision to smear and attack China, it said. Both Russia's brutal assault on Ukraine and how to handle an increasingly assertive Beijing have loomed over the three-day gathering of the world's leading industrialized democracies taking place in Japan, just across regional seas from both countries, where Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky made a surprise, in-person appearance. G7 member countries made the group's most detailed articulation of a shared position on China to date, stressing the need to cooperate with the world's second-largest economy, but also to counter its malign practices and coercion in a landmark joint communiqué Saturday. Leaders also pledged new steps to choke off Russia's ability to finance and fuel its war, and vowed in a dedicated statement to ramp up coordination on their economic security, a thinly veiled warning from members against what they see as the weaponization of trade from China, and also Russia. The G7 agreements follow a hardening of attitudes on China in some European capitals, despite differing views on how to handle relations with the key economic partner, deemed by the US as the most serious long-term challenge to the international order. Countering China's coercion. Beijing's retort later Saturday urged the G7 not to become an accomplice in American economic coercion. The massive unilateral sanctions and acts of decoupling and disrupting industrial and supply chains make the U.S. the real coercer that politicizes and weaponizes economic and trade relations, the Foreign Ministry said in a statement. The international community does not and will not accept the G7-dominated Western rules that seek to divide the world based on ideologies and values, it continued. G7 member countries are Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom and the United States. The European Union also joins as a non-country member. War in Ukraine. The G7 agreements land as China has been marshalling its diplomats in a concerted attempt to repair ties with Europe, largely by recasting itself as a potential agent of peace in the war in Ukraine, even if that claim has been met with widespread skepticism among Western nations. Last week as European leaders headed to Asia, Chinese Special Envoy Li Huawei began his own European tour billed by Beijing as a means to promote peace talks. Li, who was dispatched after Xi late last month made his first call to Zelensky since the Russian invasion, visited Ukraine on Tuesday and Wednesday, where he fronted China's vision of a political settlement. That calls for a ceasefire but not for the withdrawal of Russian troops from Ukrainian territory first, a scenario which critics say could serve to cement Russia's illegal land grab in the country and runs counter to Ukraine's own peace plan. Zelensky's travel to the G7 in Asia is also a way of putting pressure on China, according to Jean-Pierre Cabeston, an emeritus professor of political science at Hong Kong Baptist University.